Good evening and welcome to Open Line. We are talking short-term rentals in the midst of the news last week regarding revoking more than 100 permits, which likely could be in the hundreds as we talk to the panel of experts with me. Megan, let's back into this. So someone gets a revocation letter, not the easiest to say. What? I didn't see a copy of the letter, but what does it say and then what does it mean? I'm sure alarms are sounding off as soon as they see this.
For sure. So the letters, to our knowledge, have not gone out yet on this particular issue. However, I've seen revocation letters in the past, and I was actually on a panel last week with the codes department, and according to them, once you receive that letter, at the time you receive that letter, the expectation is that you will stop renting and stop advertising to rent immediately. That means, let's say you get the letter on a Friday and you have people arriving that night, the expectation is that you'll cancel that and any future bookings, and then that you'll take your listing down anywhere it's advertised: Airbnb, VRBO, your own website, social media. And that obviously has a huge impact. If, you know, my background's in digital marketing, and, you know, so I know the advertising side of this. And, you know, with Airbnb, for instance, if you were to cancel 3 reservations, you're kicked off the platform. So if that happens,
if the host cancels the reservations,
if the host cancels 3 reservations, you're kicked off the platform. So there's no coming back from that. Like if the city were to, let's say, so the city's solution is you can go through the BZA and appeal this decision. The same panel that I was on last week, there was a representative from the BZA, and he said, as much as we can empathize with these people, we won't be able to approve these appeals. So
BZA stands for?
The Board of Zoning Appeals. Yeah.
So there was a plea to them. So there was a discussion of maybe at least working around some of these reservations already made? I
wouldn't say necessarily the reservation. No, not really. So the way the BZA appeal process works is you get that letter, you're expected to stop. It'll be, what, 6 to 8 weeks before you, if you're lucky, to get in front of that board. So by then,
to make your case.
To make your case. Let's say they did say, you know what, we side with you, owner, go ahead. It's too late. You had to cancel all your reservations. You've already been kicked off of Airbnb. You can't come back from that. So while the solution to appeal is like, doesn't really make sense and is going to kill this owner's potential of renting twofold, right? Number one, the BZA's already said they're not going to approve it. And number two, even if they did, you already had to cancel, lose your status, get booted off the platform.
And I can only imagine this is sort of the main source of income for a lot of people. And Jamie, I'm sure that's what you've been hearing as far as concerns about what do I do about people who've already, you know, Nashville's a hot city. So I'm sure in advance people have made reservations already.
So, well, let me first say this. The codes employees, I think they're great people. Some of the most overworked, overburdened civil service employees in the city, bar none.
And you're not hesitating to say that either.
No, I think they're great. They're just wrong, and in a major way. And I think there's major liability exposure for the city. But back to the process. So you're going to get a revocation letter. They might call it a cancellation letter. What's the difference? None.
With bold red letters. That's what I'm kind of envisioning.
So you file your appeal with the Board of Zoning Appeals. Minimum 6 weeks, more likely 10, and that's assuming they don't lose a quorum. In order for the BZA to have a meeting, you got to have a quorum, which means 4 members. So back in November 15, I had a case about 5 o'clock, 5:30. They lost a quorum. Next meeting, lost a quorum. Next meeting, lost a quorum. So now we're talking 15 weeks. So if you want to continue operating, you better file a lawsuit, because as Megan said, you better cease operations. You cancel 3, you get kicked off the platforms. If you have some sort of superhost status, you cancel 1, you lose your superhost status. Or let's say you think you can get away with it. You know, they're not going to catch me. Well, Metro Codes has a contract with a company out of San Francisco called Host Compliance, and they're
we did a story about
they're
that
paid
last week.
$250,000 a year to catch people that are operating without a permit. So, and I've seen this happen already. You get your cancellation letter. Hey, I can beat the system, or you were out of town. Maybe you were out of the country for 2 weeks. Too bad. Your permit is canceled immediately. You operate without the permit, it's canceled. You will get a warrant filed against you, and you'll have to appear in the Environmental Court of General Sessions. And if the metropolitan government can prove that you operate without your permit, then you will get a 3-year ban against you and your property from ever being able to be a short-term rental again.
Any financial consequence?
They are disinterested in the financial consequences. It may ruin you, especially if you bought the home with the express condition in your purchase agreement, or otherwise you went to the codes department. Hey, here's a piece of property I'm thinking about buying. Can I get a permit here? They type you an email back. Yeah, sure you can. Then you go and buy the property, you buy the furnishings, you start short-term renting your property, and now they're going to revoke your permit. Could lead to financial ruin for people, and I can't find anybody in the government that cares.
So, in order to appeal, do you need a lawyer? Do you need to file a lawsuit?
If you wait through the BZA process, and what Megan just said, the likelihood of the BZA getting it right is razor thin. This is a novel issue. It's never happened before. I filed 3 lawsuits. By the time I wake up Saturday morning, that number's more likely to be 10. I have several in draft mode, and then I'm going to file a motion for a temporary injunction to ask the court, hey, stop, for my clients, the plaintiffs, stop the revocation process for them, because if my clients get a revocation letter, we're going to be in court pretty quick, and I feel sorry for the Metro attorney that has to explain to the court that the thing at issue, they went ahead and did it anyway. But I wouldn't want to be in that position.
I don't think not everyone affected by this could appeal. I would think that it is quite the process. 6 weeks, I feel like by the time someone gets the first letter, it'll just start flooding in.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, they'll pay a $100 appeal fee and think that they have a chance, and the likelihood that they have a chance is razor thin, considering the people that are making the decision are the hierarchy of the codes department. And while they're great people, they're flat wrong here.
Are there any other options to challenge this aside from going to the BZA? Is there anything else?
Filing a lawsuit in Chancery Court.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that's an expensive proposition. I get it, and some people can't do it. I understand, but if you're doing this, it would behoove you greatly to take a certain portion of your rental income and save it, don't touch it, for the purpose of protecting your permit, because the city is after them. Maybe not today, but they will be, because a year ago, owner-occupied people thought they didn't have a problem.
So
now
it seems like last year there was this one thing, state comes in, and then now it's been swung to the other pendulum.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why do you think there is this big push from the city?
From a policy perspective, it doesn't make sense. Now, I appreciate the mayor's comment saying we're not broke. But we do have a revenue problem in our city, and
we have financial issues with lack of raises within Metro City,
and we have a debt problem, and we don't have enough fire, we don't have enough police, and we're not paying our teachers enough. So where does the economic prosperity of our city go to? Well, it goes to pay the debt on the convention center. 6% goes to hotel occupancy tax, which funds the debt service on the convention center. 1% of that is reserved to the Barnes Affordable Housing Trust Fund. You hear policymakers in the council say affordable housing is important to us. There's one dedicated funding stream to affordable housing in Nashville. It's short-term rentals, and over the last 17 months, it's been $1.7 million. And nobody wants to talk about that. So it's like, they're cutting off their nose to spite their face.
Why do you think?
I think that there's and I don't know if I'm going to get a look from Jamie on this one, but something that has just not been talked about is the amount of dedicated effort from the hotel lobby. It was really interesting when we were sitting in the state hearing. The next day, I read an article, and it talked about the team of Airbnb lobbyists that were there. There were 3. Do you know how many hotel lobbyists were sitting in that room at that time?
Triple, quadrupled.
Keep going.
Okay.
50. That wasn't mentioned at all. And I think that's something that really, really needs to be acknowledged here, because there have been reports of hotel lobbies funding neighborhood associations to do their advocating for them. And while I don't want to dispute that there are problem homes, you can look at the data and it tells a very different story than what you often see.
Have you talked to the hotel lobbyists? What are they saying?
Well, this is bad for business. Short-term rentals are bad for business. And you have to remember, I came from the newspaper industry. And I remember sitting in a room full of publishers, and they were going, what are we going to do about Craigslist? This is going to kill our classified revenue. And it's like flashbacks, because that's what the hotel lobby is doing. You can't fight consumer demand. People want alternative accommodations. Our world is changing.
Is it accommodations, or is it the price? I'm assuming it's
it's both. I mean, I'm at an age where all of my friends have young children, and they can't stay in a hotel. They wouldn't travel if they had to stay in a hotel because they don't have a kitchen. They often can't get access to pack and plays. They're lugging things up elevators and through the halls versus going in to a front door and feeling like they're at home, having a kitchen where they can heat up bottles and make food for their children. And so I think that it's my generation, right? You want to experience things like a local. You don't want to go. I mean, before I lived in Nashville 6 years ago, I was here every other month for work, sometimes monthly. I did not know that there was much beyond Broadway. I mean, I literally remember being told, don't go over the bridge, right? And now that I live here, obviously all I want to do is go over the bridge and go to all these things, and I don't ever go to Broadway. But that's the experience you get when you just come and stay at a hotel, and a lot of people just aren't looking for that. They're looking for a more authentic experience now.
And I think especially also my generation, they want something unique. There's now the unique factor.
Absolutely.
I even trace it back to like even malls. Nobody goes to these stores anymore. They want something a little bit more local, a bit more unique. And it seems to translate with short-term rentals and Airbnb.
Well, Colin Reed, the CEO at Ryman Hospitality, he wrote an op-ed a while back that said, you know, short-term rentals are a necessary part of our tourism economy. You know, 17 million visitors in the last fiscal year that the data is available. Where are they going to go? There's not enough hotel room supply. And can you imagine what would happen if the city revoked a permit that was given to a hotel? Do you think they would file a lawsuit immediately? Of course they would, but nobody's trying to revoke those permits.
Okay, so if, in the grand scheme of things, if what happened to where they start phasing more and more short-term rentals out, how do you think this will essentially, and this answer is probably a given, but how it affects tourism and the economics of tourism in Nashville? So
how it's going to get resolved 2 ways, in the courts and in the legislature. You know, I haven't seen that the local legislative body here has the capacity to be able to manage it and handle it. The pendulum swings too far, you know, to put short-term rental operators out of business, and that should never be the point of a regulatory scheme. If you got some regulations, if somebody breaks the rules, you know, smack their hand real hard as you can, impose a fine, a penalty, keep them off from doing it for a certain period of time, but ultimate goal is to bring them in, to get them under the regulations and umbrella, and everybody contributing the taxes.
Speaking of the slap in the hand, I do have more questions on that. Again, if anyone has questions or comments, make sure to give a call, 615-737+. We'll have much more after the break.